math is portrayed in school as this horrible, dry subject where all you do is solve equations and calculate and write down numbers, and you find yourself sitting there and thinking, well, a computer could do this. And I agree, a computer could do it. But what real mathematics is like is you just have all these unsolved problems. Rather than being a calculator, you're actually a detective, and so your job is to solve the unsolved problem and then share it with everyone. Being a pure mathematician, what you're looking for is the ultimate truth. Hi, my name is Steph van Willigenburg and I'm a professor of mathematics. My area of research, the fancy name for it is algebraic combinatorics. And that is just a fancy way of saying that I count stuff. I do graph theory, but it's not sort of your XY axes. Instead, it's actually a bunch of dots connected by some lines. The dots are called vertices, the lines are called edges. And so you can imagine that those are really useful at modeling things like chemicals, like the hydrocarbons, or for modeling social networks where each person maybe is a dot and whether or not they're friends is the edges. Modeling social networks and, say, for example, what we had quite recently was, clusters and how COVID spreads. And so those are the sorts of applications that I can do in my work.
So the area of math that I study is called chromatic graph theory, and it really originated in the late 1800s. When someone posed the following question. So if you imagine a map of countries, usually when we depict a map, we have that the countries that are next to each other are colored differently, so we can easily tell them apart. And there was a question posed in a letter between two mathematicians where one asked the other, how many colors do we need to color any map, no matter the structure? And it took about 100 years to prove. In the 70s, it finally was proven. And during that time, there were many different methods, and people realized that studying colorings of maps, or you can generalize it to a mathematical structure called graphs, people realized that that had a lot of interesting properties, and there's a lot of interesting questions surrounding the structure and the ideas there.
Here is a crucial part of my toolkit. So it is old-fashioned pens, pencils, in particular colored pens, because there's this degree of creativity, and so that's something that's key. Blackboards, definitely for scribbling and sharing your ideas, and computers. Jolly big computers that compute all the data sets that we study. And beyond that, then just old-fashioned things like papers to go and read, and of course tea and coffee to fuel us.
So math research is really about someone posing a question that no mathematicians know the answer to yet, and then students or professors doing their best to find that answer. So there's multiple stages of that. At first, when I started doing research with Steph, I spent really an entire semester only reading papers in the area so that I could understand all the research that had been done, the research that's going on right now, and what tools we have to prove something. And then since then, I'm still reading new papers that come out, but a lot of my time it's been just sitting down and writing and trying to brainstorm different methods, different ideas for showing that something is true.
When we looking at a mathematical problem, then the first thing you'll do is you'll generate examples. From this, what we'll do is we'll do a few small examples by hand, and then at some point we need a lot more examples to be able to spot the pattern. That is when we get out our computer and run some code, and so data is hugely important.
So in a typical research meeting with my research group, we would talk about, the things we've been thinking about over the last week, and then we'll have some conjectures that are based off of maybe some data that has been generated, and then we'll just try to sit down and try to think why it's true, why it's not true, and maybe try to prove it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in general, after a meeting, we've gained knowledge and gained a little bit more understanding of the problem.
And the great thing about pure math is that when it's solved, you've got your logical explanation as to why it happens, and so the case is closed.
The lab here work on something between pure and applied mathematics. And by pure and applied, I mean graph theory. We work on graph theory, those points and lines, as some pure mathematical object, something that is in our brain, but still it has application in real life, especially computer science.
So chromatic graph theory fits into the larger area of math called discrete math. And discrete math really shows up in computer science, because with computer, everything comes down to zeros and ones, right? Bits.
The coolest thing about studying this topic, I would say, is something that I think is true of pure mathematics in general, is that it is a very sociable subject. And so you spend a lot of your time actually working with others, brainstorming and solving unsolved problems. One thing I particularly like about this area is it's not just, a science where you do calculations. It's not just a language where you're coming up with, fancy equations that mean something, which is very linguistic, but it's also really artistic when you're drawing those dots with the lines in between, or some of those boxes with numbers in. It's actually very beautiful as well. So I think my particular subject is a unique combination of science, language, and art.